Hello, I'm Eskay. I've been top 500 in Overwatch for 8 years now, and I've been in the Deadlock Alpha since May, so 3 months. This is my beginner's guide. I'm going to be covering everything you could possibly want to know for starting the game, as well as some pretty advanced techniques. So let's get started. Heroes. So if you go to the Heroes tab, there are so many heroes. Each of them has 3 abilities and an ult, referred to as ability 1 through 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Basically like this. The heroes kind of have rules where there's like tanks. For example, Abrams is a tank. Dynamo's kind of a support character. Grey Talon's a DPS. But these are not as set in stone as Overwatch because there is an item shop, which I will get into in a little bit. Basically, all of these heroes can do pretty much every single role. And like Ivy, for example, as a support character, I've seen do the most damage in the lobby multiple times. There's also not really any set team comps. Like you kind of just go in with however many, whatever. At least not yet. There's not any team comps yet. So I recommend going through here, just picking like 1, maybe 2 characters that you think look cool. Just read over their abilities, see if it might be fun for you. And then immediately go into the sandbox and pick whichever one of those. For me, my favorite character is Vindicta, so I'm gonna go Vindicta here. Okay, once you load in, before we do anything, we should get into the settings. So I'm going to go settings. As far as mouse sensitivity goes, if you come from Overwatch, multiply your Overwatch sense by 0.15. If you come from Counter-Strike, multiply it by 0.6. And if you come from other games, good luck. I have no idea. Video settings, make sure you have it set to the highest hertz for your monitor. And just use whatever setting gives you the most FPS. Audio, whatever. Make sure you're on push to talk. It's really embarrassing when you're not on push to talk. You're on open mic, you're just talking to your friend. Yeah, okay. Hotkeys. This is where things get very, like these are the things you might actually want to change. So by default, your abilities are bound 1, 2, 3, 4, which is why we call them 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you hold tab, you can hover over them. But the problem with having them bound to 1, 2, 3, and 4 is that it's very difficult to press 2 and 3 at the same time that you're holding A or D. So if you're trying to strafe and you want to use an ability, you have to move your hands in a kind of weird way, something that's much less natural than if it was bound to a different button. And don't get me wrong, it's completely fine to use these keybinds and probably a very minor advantage to changing them. But I changed them because I'm extremely sweaty. I'll show you my very sweaty keybinds. And I'm probably gonna make a video explaining why they are the way they are in a little bit, but for now I'll just show you them. So these are my super sweaty Overwatch FPS player I want Giga optimization keybinds. Feel free to copy them if you want. I'll make a video explaining why they are the way they are later. But I think default keybinds are perfectly fine to play with. One thing you should keep in mind is that there are some abilities or items that can be cast to yourself and other people. Healing Right can be cast to yourself or to teammates. And there are multiple ways to do this. You can change them in the settings based on what you're used to. By default, it's changed self-cast mode. It's set to double tap. But there's also press and hold, which I don't recommend. There's modifier button and there's self-cast button, which all 3 of these options are good, I think. I use double tap, so I have 1 slot bound to mouse wheel, where if I scroll really fast, it'll just instantly cast it on myself. So I think that's useful. Okay, let's talk about movement. It's decided by the stamina bar right here. Characters will start with either 2 or 3, depending on who they are. If you double jump, you can double jump. Takes 1 bar of stamina. You can dash using shift. Costs another bar of stamina. And you can also combine a dash with a jump. So dash, jump. So dash, jump. Although the timing is very specific, you'll get the hang of it. And there's a crouch. If you crouch while you're moving very quickly, so at the end of a slide, or at the end of a dash, for example, you will slide. And if you see the infinite symbol that showed up there, that just means you have infinite ammo while you're sliding. You can also do this after a dash jump, like this, and turn as you're doing that. There's also an item you can buy very early on. It only costs 500, which gives you 1 more stamina bar. Very useful. And yes, there is also, okay, these are very advanced movement techniques, but there's a dash at the end of a dash jump. If you press space immediately after it, you can bunny hop and keep a little bit of your speed for a couple extra jumps. Also, if you let go of W in the dash jump and then hold A and move your mouse left, or hold D and move your mouse right, depending on which direction you want to go. This is basically air strafing from Counter-Strike. You can move around corners very, very tight, like this. You can also combine this with a slide. So like say I'm trying to get away from someone, I'll do this, holding D the entire time, and you see how quickly I move around this corner versus...
Summoning crows. Throwing stake.
Hop off my dick. Yo! And you can do this omnidirectionally, so like this, backwards. You can do all of these techs the same way. Like you can do S to slide a different way. Just the movement in this game is incredibly good. There's also an item you can buy called Superior Stamina right here. It says increases the number of air dashes and air jumps that can be performed before landing from 1 to 2. So if you buy this item, you can double jump twice and dash in the air twice, which is so ridiculous. It's awesome. Holding the melee button allows you to heavy melee, which does extra damage. Here, I'll show you. Melee did 77, heavy melee 142. Okay, but you can counter a heavy melee by pressing F, which is parry. You'll see, I just parried right there. It's on a 4-second cooldown, and you can't press any buttons while you're in the parry. You can't move, you can't shoot, you can't use any abilities. But if they melee you while you're parrying, they will get stunned and you will take no damage. And the stun lasts a pretty long time. It's like over a second. So very important. If someone's trying to heavy melee you, hit that parry button. Fuck, I'm so dead.
Are you?
I parried him! Oh my god. You can also counter someone parrying your heavy melee by 180ing like this and delaying the timing on which your heavy melee hits. Now, if you hold Tab or Alt, you can hover over your abilities and you see that they have levels right here. Now, the text on the top describes what the ability does. The stuff in the middle describes the stats of your ability with all the buffs and items that you currently have. So if I bought this level 1 thing, plus 0.75 tether duration, it'll increase 2.25 to 3.
Try to escape.
And as you level them up, you can see what you get for them based on the bottom. And you see the number 1, 2, and 5. That's how much ability points it costs. Now, you earn ability points as the game goes on when you get stronger and collect souls. I'll explain souls in a bit, but... Okay, let's talk about the item shop. Very important. If you walk up to this thing in the sandbox and click B on it, you can see you'll have a default build and all of the items in the game. Hovering over any item will give you a description of exactly what it does, and there are two main types of damage in this game, weapon and spirit. Weapon is pretty much exactly as it says. It buffs your weapon, so 15% weapon damage, 20% ammo damage, or 24% increased ammo. And spirit will almost always buff your abilities, although there are some exceptions to this, like when you go into Vindicta's Fly. It says 10.8 spirit damage per bullet. So even though I'm shooting my gun, because I'm in fly, weapon damage will buff my shooting in fly as well as spirit damage. So there's a lot of exceptions to this. It's just very, very general. Vitality is almost all defensive items, though all of these items usually come with a weapon buff or spirit buff as well. So this one has 25% weapon damage and movement speed on top of the buff that you already get. Oh, also, anything that's active is an item that you can use on a cooldown. Basically, you give yourself another ability. So if I buy Divine Barrier, I can choose which button to bind it to. I'll bind it to Z, and whenever I press Z in game, I cast a Divine Barrier. Now, the number of items is completely overwhelming, and they've added a system so that you don't have to worry about it. If you head over to Builds and click Browse Builds, then go to Public, you can see every build that people have published, and a lot of people make very in-depth, like there's some very in-depth guides on here. See, these are all, there's a lot of information. It tells you the ability point order, how to play the build, etc. Things like this. What I recommend is finding a build that doesn't have too much stuff on it. So there's basically two kinds of builds that people make. One is very advanced, like this one, where they provide you with lots of options and you choose what to buy based on the situation you're in the game. But you're not going to know what to buy at the very beginning. So I recommend just finding a build that you don't really have to think about too much and just gives you a line of things to buy. Now the way most builds are laid out is cheapest items at the top, so you buy them early on, then middle expensive items, then middle expensive items, then very expensive items. So typically you just purchase from left to right and then top to bottom. So in laning phase I'll just be like buy. The items also range in cost from 500, 1250, 3000, 6300. So yeah, typically the first row will just be 500 items, then 1250, then 3000, then 6300. Okay, also whichever build you select here will transfer to in-game. So let's go ahead and hop into a game and I'll explain how everything works. Now, when you actually go to queue a game, if you're not doing a bot match, you'll go into play Deadlock. And there are certain priorities you can set for the characters that you want to play. So you're required to pick at least 3 in order to enter, but you can set them in a priority that you want to play them. So my favorite character is Vindicta, so I'm going to right click her twice, meaning she has the highest priority now. And my second favorite is Haze, so I'll right click her once to give her second priority. And my third favorite is Wraith. So now I'll most likely get Vindicta, but if somebody else had her as highest priority and they get them, then I'll get Haze. Or if somebody else had her high priority, then I'll get Wraith. You can also put as many characters on your roster as you want, so it could be fun to just queue as all of them and see what you get. Or you can prioritize like a million of them. When you actually get into the game, you're going to look around and see your teammates next to you. Whoever's standing across from you is the person you're going to be laning against. And on the top of the screen, you're going to see a color behind your player portrait. It's like blue, purple, or something. The person or people with the same color as you are who you're going to be fighting against at the beginning of the game. Now, in Deadlock, there are 4 lanes, and 2 of them are going to have 2 people. The lane that you're set at the beginning doesn't matter. You can always ask your teammate to swap. But keep in mind, the game does matchmake based on skills. So like if you're a very high level player and you're queuing with your friend that's brand new, the person in your friend's lane is going to be brand new and the person in your lane is going to be just as good as you. So if you two swap lanes, your friend is not going to have a good time. Now let's talk about souls. Souls are the most important currency that we have, and kind of the only currency, I guess, other than ability points. You use it to buy items in the shop, which make you more powerful. You can see the total souls you've collected, as well as everyone else's total souls, at the top of the screen under the character icon. And if you hold tab, you can hover over each character, even the enemies, and see what items they have purchased. You can also hover over their items, which shows the item description, and if you hover over their abilities, you can see the cooldown and damage that their abilities do with all the items and buffs they have currently applied. For example, yesterday I was getting slammed by a Grey Talonal every what felt like 30 seconds, so I checked their ability, their ultimate, and it showed that it was on a 47-second cooldown. Which is really short, by the way. What in the world? Now, earning souls. The primary way of doing this is by killing creeps, which are these little minion guys. Whenever you get the last hit on one, it'll give you souls and a little orb will pop out of the top of them. The amount of souls that you get for this increases as the game goes on. If you shoot the orb that pops out of the top of them, you will get extra souls on top of what you've already gotten. If nobody shoots the orb from you killing a minion, you get it anyway. But you have to be very smart about this, because the other team can see that orb as well. If they shoot the orb, they'll get the souls that you would have gotten for shooting it. This also works the other way around, so if you see an orange orb that's theirs, you can shoot it and take it from them. So laning is all about getting as many last hits as possible, confirming your orbs and denying theirs. If you melee a creep, it will give you the souls for last hitting it as well as the orb that pops out of it, so it cannot be denied. But it's much easier for a tank to do this than it is for a squishy DPS like Vindicta. You also have to worry about the other person killing you, of course, or you can try to kill them. Killing someone will give you souls, that's it. And The more ahead they are, the more souls you'll get for killing them. If you check on the bottom left, around halfway through the game, you'll see a thing that says unsecured souls, and whatever that number is how many souls you'll drop when you die, which lets the other team pick them up. In every lane, you'll notice there's a little area with a veil in front of it. Hiding behind this lets you see enemies and shoot them, but bars the enemy from seeing you. It's like a bush in Fortnite or in League. They can still shoot you, but they can't see you. There are also jungle minions to kill that give you souls, ranging from tier 1 to 3, with each tier doing more damage, having more health, and granting you more souls for killing them. You can see where these jungle minions are and when they're up based on these little icons on your minimap. Some characters are much better suited for farming these minions quickly than others, but there are no dedicated junglers. Everyone can and should be picking up these kills for the extra souls whenever you have downtime or no lane to kill. There are also boxes and golden pot things across the map. If you melee, shoot, or slide through them, souls increase damage and reduced cooldown buffs can pop out of them. At certain soul milestones, you unlock ability points as well as get something called a boon, which just increases your stats. You don't even have to think about boons other than knowing that someone with a higher soul count, on top of having more items, will have higher base stats than you. In each lane, there's a shop, tower, a walker, and a set of base guardians. The tower is the first line of defense and it will do a ton of damage to you. However, if you have a minion close enough, the tower will shoot the minion instead of you, allowing you to do damage to it or get close enough to damage the enemy hero. Though, if you are closer to the tower than any of your minions and you damage the other hero, it'll start shooting you instead. The red dots on the minimap also show where the enemy creeps are. So all these red dots are creeps. You can also see where the enemy heroes are. And this icon is the shop, so you'll see every tower has a shop. Now, each tower also has a limited range, so this is the enemy tower. You'll see that you are not safe at the shop. If he was shopping right there, I could totally shoot him. But as soon as I walk in here, I'm getting shot by the tower. But I can also flank around. And here, I'm still not getting shot by the tower. So he's not safe here either. The tower is just a circle around. See? Yes. Many ways to flank. Not safe. It will protect you, but not that much. Breaking the tower gives you an ability point and a bunch of souls pop out of the top. These extra souls that pop out the top are granted to your entire team. So it's really important that you confirm them so that the other team can't deny them. There's also a shop behind each tower and you can only use it so long as the tower is up. Once it's broken, you can't use it anymore. You can also see which towers and which objectives are up either by looking at the map at these symbols or by looking at the image right below the timer at the top of the screen. When all the tower shops are missing, this extra shop becomes the most important thing that you need to remember. It's usable by both teams for the entire game, so you don't have to go back to base to buy your items. Walkers are even more threatening than towers. They do lots more damage and have more range, as well as charge up a big stun that hits everything in a circle around it. You have to be much closer to the walker to do damage than the walker has to be to you to do damage, so you almost always need to have a wave of minions there to tank the walker. Breaking it gives your entire team souls, just like the tower does, but make sure they don't get denied. Also, if you don't have a wave of minions, it gains resistance, meaning you do much less damage to the walker. This resistance also applies for every single objective except for the towers. Also, the first time you break an objective, excluding the towers, you gain a flex slot. If you look at the bottom left of the screen, you can see you can only buy 4 of each type of item, but a flex slot lets you get an extra one of any one of them, so flex slots become extremely important. If you hover each flex slot, you can see what needs to be done in order to unlock it. Past the walker, you get to the base guardians. They don't grant any souls for killing them, but they do give you a flex slot and enable your minions to run the entire lane without running into any tower damage. So if you clear a couple waves of the other team minions, you'll have one big wave of minions that can fight their way all the way to the other team's shrine by themselves. Which leads me to shrines. Each team has a base, and each base has 2 shrines and a patron. Breaking a shrine gives you a flex slot, and breaking both shrines enables your team to shoot their patron, who is floating in the sky. If you kill the patron, it will transform into a weakened patron and become a little ball down in front of their spawn. Breaking this ball wins you the game. Also, there's spawn behind this wall. If you go in there, you're going to take a lot of damage. But in your spawn, you have a shop and it also heals you. As the game goes on, respawn times become longer and longer, eventually reaching over a minute at super endgame, which leads me to mid-boss. When you hear this roar, it means mid-boss spawned. You'll also know if the enemy team is fighting the mid-boss if you hear the same roar and the mid-boss is already spawned. Killing the mid-boss spawns a Rejuvenator, which has to be heavy meleeed in order to claim. Claiming this will give your team the Rejuvenator buff, which allows you to respawn much more quickly as long as you have it. Dying, or being dead when the Rejuvenator is claimed, will remove the Rejuvenator buff. It can also be stolen by the other team even if you're the one who killed the mid-boss. There's a lot of interesting counterplay to heavy meleeing the Rejuvenator to claim it. For example, you can stand on top of it and press parry on somebody who's trying to steal it so that they get stunned and your teammate can claim it. Let's talk teleporters. There are teleporters laid throughout the map underground, and there's a couple above ground. You can see where they are with this icon on the minimap. They're very useful for escape or traveling across the map quickly. Ziplines. Holding space attaches you to the zipline, and pressing space while you're on it will make you jump off. You have a zipline speed boost, but it has a 5-minute cooldown, so use it at the right time. You move in whatever direction you're facing when you attach to the zip. And that's about it. I know I overloaded you with information. There is a learn to play section with tutorials that you can go through if you really want to lock in the information that you've learned so far, but I'm the type of person to just instantly queue. If the video helped, subscribe, leave a like, or don't.